Welcome to Flyers Daily. I'm your host, Colin Kelley. Do your Philadelphia Flyers make a play for Bowen Byram, the left shot defenseman of the Buffalo Sabres? 6'1", 25 years old. He's looking for a big ticket, first pairing type of extension. Could the Flyers make it work? I could see it. Frankly, the Flyers have been long connected to Byram, predating even last offseason when Buffalo was rumored to be trading their RFA, who signed a bridge 2-year deal. So with 1 year to go, this has to be the time for the Buffalo Sabres to trade him, you would think, if they want to cash in, get commensurate value, whether it's picks, players, prospects. There's a lot of talent on that Sabres roster, both left shot, blue liners like your Dahlin, Samuelson, Power, but also young ascending talent that really need a big pay rise, such as a Zach Benson. It makes sense for Jarmo Kekalainen to really start to mold this Buffalo franchise into his own image. Already, ironically enough, just traded up from 27 to 20 right in front of your Philadelphia Flyers. Is pick 21 involved, potentially? I don't quite see it. Is Owen Tippett involved? Maybe, but I think the Flyers really want to keep Owen Tippett and would want maybe even more than a Bowen Byram type of player. Look, with the extension potential, long term, 6 to 7 year deal, $8-9 million per. Look, the Flyers would have to love the player, and they certainly have a history when you consider even before last season. Go way back to the Cutter-Gauthier trade where national insiders, your Sarah Valleys, your Elliot Friedmans of the world, have brought up how the Colorado Avalanche ultimately declined a 1-for-1 Gauthier-Byram swap, wanting some type of pick compensation on top, which is understandable that the Flyers were not willing to do that. Ultimately getting Drysdale, which has frankly worked out as well as I think you could hope for the Flyers. We'll talk about Jamie Drysdale in very short order here. But sticking with Bowen Byram, I think the pathway to a Byram trade is potentially dealing Cam York. Cam York to the Buffalo Sabres as a profile fitting into their top four, maybe even, frankly, their bottom pair, considering how loaded they are, but from a cost certainty and just a sheer talent perspective, and all around, but primarily now defensively stout Cam York on a multi-year deal at just over $5 million, I think presents a real attraction for the Buffalo Sabres, while Bowen Byram on the flip side, real attraction to your Philadelphia Flyers from just the power play, the offensive production potential, a 40-plus point player, a guy who is comfortable in a multitude of roles within a power play. His offensive instincts, look, as a quarterback, but also rotating up in and around the goal, he's got a shot on him, and he's got some craft to his game. The Flyers potentially acquiring Byram, trading Cam York. That's the pathway that I see here. Do you see a pathway to acquiring Bowen Byram? Let me know in the comments. Would I see a pathway? Frankly, a pillar of this offseason from a make-or-break perspective. You talk about the internal RFAs, Trevor Zegras, and Jamie Drysdale. Jamie Drysdale, starting with the 24-year-old right shot defenseman who's a little bit undersized, sub 6 foot, but has meant so much to this blue line, has just taken step after step. And funny enough, Zegras and Drysdale, the Anaheim Duck reclamation projects that have worked out quite well to date. Talk about best friends, a special relationship between the two. I think there's a inherent motivation for them on their perspective to tie down 7+ year deals here in Philly, which I think also presents a unique opportunity for your Philadelphia Flyers to get these guys tied down for a long term, but at a very reasonable AAV. In the case of Zegras and Drysdale, there's a unique marker potential when you look at the Flyers cap situation. What I mean by that is you look at Sanheim in the low $6 million. You look at Konechny at 8.75, the Travi, so to speak. With both Drysdale and Zegras, I'm looking at, okay, let's make each of you the highest paid respective forward and defenseman on this roster. Zegras, he can play center. He almost touched 70 points, over 25 goals. Just an element that the Flyers, frankly, do not have outside of him from a dynamic offensive ability down the middle. Yes, he's going to play wing. It's going to be interchangeable game to game. You never quite know what Rick Tocchet might do. But you talk about 7 by about 8.8, maybe upwards of $9 million for Zegras. You look at Drysdale, 7 by 6.5, maybe reaching $7 million per. I think that is a real value for the Philadelphia Flyers. You look at the cap, what those deals, what those extensions look like, just halfway through in about the next 3 years, when you're talking $120+ million total cap allowance. Combined, you're talking in and around the $15 to $16 million range for 2 impact players. That's my projection for these 2 players as far as deals go. I don't want to see bridge deals. I just don't. And I think Danny Briere, with his behavior extending history, so to speak, of late, give these guys the long year, the long term, so they go past that age 30 season where you're not maybe putting yourself in a disadvantageous position where you're following up age 29, 30 season with a huge commitment financially that you might not be comfortable with as far as how that deal potentially ages out. Those are my predictions as far as Zegras and Drysdale RFA goes. Could we see it as soon as July 1st? I think we could. I think Drysdale in particular. With Zegras, we'll see. A client of Pat Brisson, the mega agent in the NHL, Dylan Larkin, Elias Pettersson, those have to get sorted, you think, before Trevor Zegras maybe becomes the priority for Brisson, unless Zegras just goes to him and says, look, I want to be here for the long term, and I'm not even going to hold up the AAV that much. That would be a dream for us Flyers fans, but look, both players, Zegras and Drysdale, have earned their money. What are your projections? Those are mine. I'll tell you my projections for, frankly, the 21st overall pick with the Philadelphia Flyers. Do they keep the pick? Do they trade the pick? Let me start by handicapping. I think it's a 60% chance that the Flyers pick 21st. I think there's a 40% chance they are not picking 21st. Of that 40%, I think starting with trade up, I would put that at about 10%. Here's why. At 21, the Flyers on draft night see the board break. Is there a chance that they identify pick 17, the LA Kings, for example? We'll give you 21 plus maybe a prospect in our pipeline, plus maybe a future second-round pick to go up and get an Alexander Command, an Oliver Savanto, a center who potentially could reach the height of a second-line center. That would be certainly a motivation for your Philadelphia Flyers in a big time way where you don't want to be caught holding the bag of then your third, fourth, fifth choice options. The other end of it, do they trade up all the way to around pick 9, pick 10, starting with the Panthers, in addition to the Nashville Predators sitting there at 10th? If they fall in love with, say, a Daxon Rudolph, 6'3", right shot defenseman, funny enough, Brent Briere acknowledging, look, we've actually got a bunch of right-hand D in our pipeline, so maybe we're looking at left-hand defensemen. But Rudolph, 6'3", offensive production, like really no one else in this current Flyers mix organizationally. You're talking about a guy who only bettered his production in the playoffs when things got tough. 27 points, 9 goals, power play potential. That would make some sense for the Flyers as far as being aggressive and trading up. But what would you have to attach to pick 21? What about the Leafs pick? How attractive that is viewed by other teams? It would definitely vary when you consider Florida as a cup winner 2 of the last 3 seasons. Tough year this past season. Injuries. They're more so concerned with retooling, making a push this season. So Florida, did they do that? I don't know. Nashville, I could see the motivation to just stockpiling picks, futures. Rudolph is a target I'm seeing as a potential trade-up guy. I'm also looking at Malte Gustafsson, a Swedish 6'4" left shot. So what the Flyers, if anything, funny enough, might be preferring, even though inherently right shot, we know the value that comes with right shot. Gustafsson as a left shot, he is arguably, of all the defensemen in this class, viewed as the highest floor. Maybe the lowest ceiling, but as far as a floor, as a legit second pair shutdown potential Jamie Drysdale partner in a few years, I could see both those players as potential big-time targets for the Flyers. Just you're not in range currently, but you gotta be aggressive if you have any chance. Only look at it, though, as 10%, hence 30% of my 40% that the Flyers don't make the 21st pick is either a trade down or a trade out altogether. Specifically with a trade down, do you look at a team like the Sharks? Do the Canadians want to move up? Can you get a potential center prospect or a left shot defense prospect to go from 21st to move down at least 5+ spots? Still get a guy you like, maybe a Hawkinson, another left shot defenseman in this draft, maybe a Tommy Blyle. That's certainly possible. I would say in a pure trade down, about 15%. So then I think 15% chance the Flyers end up trading out of this pick altogether. Do they get very creative in acquiring a top 6 center? Specifically, could the Flyers end up trading a one Rasmus Ristolainen finally? Look, he's got 1 year left on his deal. We thought he was gone maybe even 2 deadlines ago. Certainly this past deadline seemed like a sell-high opportunity, although Danny Briere, kudos to him, seems to have played his cards relatively right. Obviously, the incredible run into the playoffs through into the second round, the shutdown playoff Risto that we saw, has a lot of value. Could you see Risto and the 21st pick for a potential Shane Pinto, Dylan Cousins? The Ottawa Senators are linked right now to Ristolainen by all your national media, national insiders. So if the Senators like Risto, you gotta think the Flyers are eyeing some top 6 centers. Anthony DeMarco, also Flyers insider, specifically talking about the potential match, potential Ottawa moving on from one of their centers. I think that is a distinct possibility when you connect the dots. A Risto trade plus the 21st overall pick, moving out of the first round altogether, but for a legitimate pivot down the middle to completely reshape this Flyers lineup and really this new era of orange that this front office has been so consistently pushing onto us as fans. This is the exact type of move that would honestly get me on board. Where, okay, you can start to see things really changing. You start to look at each area of this Flyers roster, from a Trevor Zegras long-term partnership with potential Cousins or Pinto as top 6 type of centers. You look at the defensemen. You look at in goal now. Things are looking up and up for your Philadelphia Flyers, guys. Let me know what you want to see as a Risto potential return. How excited are you for the draft? Let me know in the comments, guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.